is a special meeting. The first item on the agenda, I guess, well, not on the agenda, but I guess we should do a roll call. I'm Councilmember Rodenberg. So I'll just call the names as I see them on my screen, and you could say here. Councilmember Wook.
Here.
Councilmember Aversol.
Here.
Director Katrina Knudsen.
Here.
City Administrator Bob Larson.
Here.
Chief Kelly Busey.
I'm here.
Paul Rice.
Here.
And Josh Stecker. And
Here.
staff member is Michael Williams.
Here.
Right. First item on the agenda is the fireworks ordinance violation penalties. You are all set to send the description and the chief's note. Chief, would you like to address it?
Certainly. Thank you, Councilmember Rodenberg. This portion of the conversation stemmed from our recent review of the fireworks ordinance and its resulting shortening to 1 day of use. During that, I contemplated the existing fine, which is $1,000 infraction. And as a reminder, by municipal code, we can only issue infractions in the amounts of $100, $500, or $1,000. So $1,000 is our highest fine. The current code is spelled out in front of you, subject to $1,000 fine. And I would maybe suggest that we consider reducing that fine in one of two manners. I have them both proposed there. One would be a maximum penalty of $100 infraction. And then also adding in the language that we borrow from our bicycle helmet and our new ordinance on EPAMDs and all that, regarding the municipal court allowing the penalty be served in community service. So if we have a 16-year-old, say, that's lighting fireworks, and we give them a $100 ticket, the judge could then say, why don't you do 4 hours of community service instead? Then a variation of that penalty, as an idea for your consideration, would be a $100 fine if it occurs from June 28th to July 5th, which happens to be the state allowed fireworks times. And then outside of that, those times, it would be a maximum penalty of $1,000. So somebody could say, hey, I just moved here. I didn't realize you had this restrictive ordinance. So I was just following state law. Well, here's your $100 fine, not a $1,000 fine. So again, the community service component could be a part of that. Any or all combinations I offer for your consideration.
Good. I can't see if anyone has their hands raised. So Councilman Mawuk.
Yes, thank you. So before we voted on this, I had considered and thought that maybe a reduction in penalty was perhaps a good thing. But after listening to Councilmember Aversol and several other council members, I am moved to think that actually the $1,000 fine that we have today is appropriate, and then that we should also publicize the heck out of it so that everyone knows it's $1,000, and that will be a very good deterrent at the same time. So I would suggest that we keep the $1,000 fine, that we don't lower it at all.
Are there any other comments?
I do have one, Councilman Rodenberg, if I can, that kind of relates to what Councilmember Wook said. I do agree that a $1,000 fine is a nice lever to have, I guess. But I'll tell you, from a practical standpoint, when we let police officers exercise discretion, like when we stop somebody who might be driving 42 miles an hour in a 25 mile an hour zone, we often write that only for 35. We kind of lower that. And it's easier to write a series of $100 infractions than it would be to hand out 1,000. I'm not sure that many cops here would be eager or feel comfortable handing out a $1,000 fine, and we might lose that enforcement opportunity. $100, yeah, that's easier, and then the word would spread. Hey, I got a ticket for $100 from the cops. So that's just my input from a practical level.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that when we discussed this amendment to the ordinance at the council meeting, we thought that enforcement was going to be an issue anyway. And I think if it be, I think an officer would have a hard time. Well, I think they would be using their discretionary powers and not writing $1,000 ticket. So we would get no tickets written. And I think $1,000 is a little heavy-handed unless it's outside of the state mandated dates. So I'm agreeing with the penalties as chief has proposed them.
So we have
$1,000
current, oh,
$1,000 outside of the state guideline, and $100 when our Councilmember Wook.
so currently it is $1,000. And so people spend hundreds of dollars on fireworks. I don't think that $100 is going to, if we're going to publicize this, $100 is not going to defer anybody from using fireworks. And hopefully part of this education program is to make it so that they won't, citizens who are spending hundreds of dollars on fireworks, $100 for a penalty is not a big deal to them. So I think it needs to be more than that. And so I'd like to just keep it at what it is now. That's how I feel about it.
Chief, I have a question. With a $1,000 fine, does the court still have the ability to make it 40 hours of community service?
I don't think you could exceed what's written in the ordinance as far as number of hours at the prescribed penalty. They could reduce that, so they could say $1,000, but hey, this is your first offense. I could lower it to $200 or 4 hours of community service, something like that. So that is an option at the judiciary level. One more point just for Councilmember Wook, and I certainly don't intend to sound argumentative. It's certainly your decision. I'll just remind the council members here that at least in my time here, I can't recall us ever writing a $1,000 ticket. I know we referred one to the prosecutor once, but that was about it.
You gave us all the records for the last 5 years.
Right.
And in the last 5 years, there's only been one formal report written. And that wasn't a ticket. That was probably the one you referred.
I think that was a report to the prosecutor for consideration. Yeah.
Councilmember Wook?
I think it'd be fine if nobody got a ticket and if there were no fireworks. So I don't have a problem, that not writing a ticket as long as there's no fireworks going off on days when it's not supposed to. So I still think that, I'm sure this will go back to the council, but I'm still very much in favor of leaving it as is.
Yeah. Councilmember Aversol?
Yes, I'm in favor of leaving it as it is. And I just got to say, I have a problem when I hear our chief of police say that if a person is doing 45 miles per hour and a 25, a police officer can change that to say that they're doing 35. I disagree with that. I think if a person is doing 45 miles per hour, the officer has to write down 45 miles per hour. I find that lying and I find that dishonest, and I don't like to hear that. So I don't know why that would even be allowed.
Well, we're a bit off topic but that's actually the standard. That's normal, and it's actually prescribed that a police officer has that discretion to write up to a certain
Well, that sounds like they're just writing whatever they want and changing things that does not sit well. I'm sorry to say.
I've been on the other end of that and gotten the same kind of treatment where I was, my speed was written down, and I learned the same lesson with it 5 miles or 10 miles over the speed limit than if I would have been at 30 miles.
I understand what's going on, but I think in the light of the current situation, the day and age that we're in, hearing that kind of thing is disturbing. I think that needs to be really thought about and possibly changed, because it gives a lot of people, police officers, discretion to go in a lot of different directions that I don't feel I'm comfortable with. And
how are you addressing that to the fireworks penalties? Are you?
I'm talking about police officers enforcing laws, and I heard my chief of police say that if we pull someone over, they're doing 45 and a 25. Well, potentially lower it down to 35. And I don't like that. I think if the radar gun says they're doing 45, I don't see how you can change the facts, or because you can do anything there. That just opens up all kinds of problems.
Well, just for clarity, we actually write in our affidavit what the actual speed was, so the judge knows that.
Okay, well, I think it's up to the judge to be making the decisions. I don't think police officers on the street should be doing that.
Do any members of staff have a comment on this issue? Okay, then the purpose of it being on our agenda is so the committee can make a recommendation to the council when it comes before the council. I get the feeling that it's, we will vote, but I get the feeling that it's going to be 2-1 here. So is it fair to say that Councilmember Wook and Councilmember Abasol would like to leave the ordinance as it is?
Yes.
Okay, so then that will be our recommendation to council. And for the record in the recording, I disagree. Then we'll go on to the next item, and it's updates to the fee schedule. Everyone got a complete updated fee schedule. And who would like to address that? Michael?
I think Josh was going to do that.
Okay.
I think Molly prepared the fee schedule. Looking at it, she's unable to be here today, so I can walk you through it really quickly. The chief thing that we wanted to change here is that we need to change the fees for our public records requests for body cam footage. That's a special fee that we can charge to cover our costs for redaction on those. And that wasn't in our fee schedule before. So essentially we're just adding it. The other thing I think that we're doing is we are adding the term master use permit to our franchise agreement section. I believe that's just a technical term that we need to add. It's kind of interchangeable with the franchise agreement, and I don't think it changes the fees at all. Other than that, I don't believe there are any other changes.
So we changed something on the fingerprinting and firearm permits.
Yeah, I think that was go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah, that's correct. We haven't increased that in many years. And so we did a poll of some surrounding agencies and found that charging per fingerprint card.
You're fading out, Chief. Is that my computer or you?
Yeah, I'm not sure where that noise is coming from. There we go.
Perhaps others could mute their microphones so we can see what might be going on there.
Yeah. So our clerks did a survey of some of the surrounding agencies, and charging per fingerprint card seems to be the norm, and between $12 and $15 seem to be the norm per card. So some applications require 1 fingerprint card, some require 2.
Okay. So council members, do you have any comment on these? Yes, Councilmember Wook. You're on mute, Councilwoman.
Thank you. So I'm very much in favor of these items that you mentioned today, but I noticed that there's a lot more fees on here. And I had an opportunity to speak with Director Knudsen today. And because I called her, I was concerned at the other fees. I want to make sure that the amount that the city is collecting covers the amount that the city actually uses to process these fees. I think we should be getting that money back. I think the money that we're using is the citizens' money. And so so I think it's only appropriate that we make sure that we're not spending the citizens' money on fees that the applicant should pay for. So I'm hoping that somewhere in the future, soon, we can take a look at those other fees that were not brought forward today to change, and have a conversation and get some work done on that.
Okay. So I understood from the city clerk that all these fees were reviewed by the directors of the departments. Is that correct, Director Knudsen? No?
No, Councilmember Rodenberg, the the ones that are before you today were outstanding fees that either were inadvertently removed during the last fee schedule or new items that needed to be added to the fee schedule. The development review fees holistically have not been looked at for potential increase or decrease, at least in the past 4 years.
Okay, so that's going to take up some staff time that certainly up to the department directors to determine whether they have that time to do that now. Our point here today, the reason the agenda is to, on the agenda is to make a recommendation to council in regards to these updated fee schedule. Councilmember Absalom, have you got any comments regarding the fees? Anyone? And yes, City Administrator Larson.
Thank you. I just wanted to summarize. Yeah, these are just very limited reviews, and we've got those. I was going to ask the staff when they went through these to pinpoint the pages in case council had any questions, but I think we've got that discussion well in hand. And we're going to have to take up a thorough review, which may require, I'll just say it here, may require some type of support from perhaps a consultant if necessary. This is a lot of work to go through, and we couldn't expect to put that on staff, even if we were fully staffed, because we need critical information from other jurisdictions for comparison. That usually gets encompassed in some type of a consultant report. But I'll let that go for now and ask for the committee for future consideration of those types of things.
Okay, so for our purposes today, it looks like this committee recommends to council to adopt these fee updates. Is that correct? Any objection? Yes, Councilmember Wu.
So perhaps we can, perhaps the way to handle the future, looking at permit fees is get it in the budget for 2022. Would that be more realistic than to tackle it at this point in time, the other fees on this list?
My recommendation would be, if that's the direction from the committee, that we would look at putting this as an objective under the community development department to look at our fees next year. We likely won't have adequate time or capacity to do that this year.
Yeah.
But it's something that we could propose to the council for inclusion in the 2022 budget.
Thank you. I think that's a really good idea.
All right, then that will be our recommendation to council, is to pass these, and we can comment to them that we're going to look at the rest of the fees in the budget of 2022. Okay. The next item on the agenda was you were all copied on the complaint from the citizen about the speed of bicycles and on Cushman Trail. I think the chief gave a good response. I don't know if there was some really high speeds that the fellow quoted. Chief, have you got any more comments? I told the citizen that we would address this in this committee meeting. So I'd like to be able to get back to them with some kind of response.
Yes, Councilmember Rodenberg, that was such a fleeting thing. I'm going back to my sent items here to refresh my own memory on the issue, but it was that, give me just a second here. And I'm sorry, I didn't even notice this on the agenda today, or I've been
I just noticed, I didn't think you did respond. It was the mayor that responded and said that he would discuss it with the chief. But you recall the email though he sent?
Barely. If you can refresh my memory, I can probably comment more coherently on it.
Well, it was, he had some anecdotal instances where the speed was excessive, but he was talking about speeds of 52.3 miles per hour, 49.2 miles per hour, 47 miles per hour, and 48 miles per hour. And walkers are going 3.5 miles an hour. So,
right, he thought sure he'd get those speeds from either.
Yeah, it was. I think he asked them, and some of these were more technical bicycles that had speedometers on top. And he also commented that the attitudes of some of the people that he asked were that they were very proud of these speeds, and that actually he called out these anecdotal references of several walkers being scared, or people with dogs on leashes. The dog could run out in front, and he thinks it's an accident waiting to happen. I've never been on Cushman Trail, so I don't know if we have signs, or if they're exceeding posted limits, or.
Right, there is no posted bicycle speed limit on there, and electric bikes are prohibited from that. So,
Yeah, he did say these were electric bikes.
he says both regular and electric bikes in his email.
Oh, did he? Yeah, it's in. The speeds were incredible.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I don't know how to respond to that right here on a public meeting, but I don't know how that he would determine those speeds, and I would challenge the speeds attained.
Sure. So, do you think there's any thing in the future? Does any or council members? Do you think it's something we should address in council or staff? Do you think we could get signage, or is signage necessary? Just, I'd like to be able to respond to this gentleman.
So Councilmember Abasal has his hand up. I think you said.
I'm sorry, I didn't see. Oh, I do see it now.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
Councilmember Absol.
So I have experience on the Cushman Trail, and there are people on bikes that are going quite fast. I don't know if the person that was described in the email is the same person that I've experienced, but I've had one person that I don't know if it's a cultural thing, but I don't think he's well, I won't say that, but anyways, he just yells at people as he rides behind them and expects you to jump out of their way. And so there is some etiquette that needs to be addressed on these trails, because we do have some steep portions on the Cushman Trail where I could see a person on a bicycle, especially if they're really trying to get their speed up, could hit those limits. So I think a sign or something like that. I don't think people are going to really pay attention to the signs, quite honestly. But having something that somebody can point to in case an altercation does happen, or someone does get a dog caught up under the wheels, I think that would be helpful to the citizen. Yeah, because it probably will happen if it hasn't happened already.
You really can't legislate etiquette. So yes,
We're getting
Councilmember
ready
Wu.
to put some signage, I think, on the Cushman Trail. So Chief Bushy, is any signage about speeds of bicycles appropriate on the trail?
Well, for every sign you want to put up, you'd have to have an underlying ordinance to back it up. And I don't see how that could actually be enforced. So it's problematic, and maybe a consideration for the Parks Commission to take up.
Okay. Then I'll write a note to Parks Commission at the time when we discussed it, and we decided that there was probably something they should address. Signs that just say watch your speed, then don't necessarily have a speed limit. It just might cause awareness to some bicyclists that otherwise wouldn't be. Well, if there's no further comments, then yes, Mr. Rice.
Yeah, I've got a couple daughters that live up in the Seattle area, so I've spent a lot of time on the trail systems up there. The trails in Seattle are all a part of their park system, the Burt Gilman and Green Lake and all those. And in 2018, they posted all of their park trails with a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit. And that goes for pretty much, inline skaters and bikes and scooters and the whole thing. And it was pretty well received overall. They did a couple studies, as far as polling goes, and they got just a lot of positive feedback as far as that goes. That's it.
Okay.
My 2 cents.
Councilmember Aversol.
Well, I just would say, as far as signage and things like that, when I see like those slow kids, those fluorescent green slow kids signs on the street. I know those aren't official, but I pay attention to them. I slow down because of them. So I'm not saying put the slow kid signs out on the Cushman Trail, but I'm just saying that signage can, help. It probably won't combat all the people, but I think it'll, appeal to some people in their hearts to slow down if they have signage.
Okay. Then my action item then will be to contact the Parks Commission, put it in their court and say we'd like to have a recommendation going down the road. Okay, if there are no further comments or anything, we can, I can tell you the next scheduled meeting for us is June 21st. Then I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Yes, Councilmember Wook.
I move to adjourn.
Okay, and I'm the only one that votes, so let's adjourn. Thank you very much for your attention. I appreciate you coming.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.